Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of Daredevil Season 2, Episodes 10 through 13. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Season 2 of Daredevil in batches. This video is for the last 4 episodes in the season, Episodes 10 through 13, so I'll have to give a spoiler warning for Season 2 of Daredevil. If you haven't seen all of Season 2, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise things will be spoiled for you. So these last 4 episodes were probably my least favorite of the entire season, which had a very strong start. It seemed to break apart into too many storylines, none of them very strong or convincing. And the way the season ended was far too open-ended for my taste, as too many things were left unresolved, like we still don't know what the deal with that giant hole is. So let me go through each episode, starting with episode 10, The Man in the Box. So this episode starts off where the last one left off, where Daredevil discovers a bunch of victims hooked up to some freaking machine, including the son of the accountant who was being coerced by the Hand. So he takes them to Claire, the night nurse, who manages to square off part of the hospital that isn't being used, and she tries to care for them, but finds some freaky shit has been done to them, but still not sure what exactly is going on. Matt also warns her that people may be coming to kill them. Meanwhile, Matt, along with Karen and Foggy, have to deal with the aftermath of Frank Castle's escape from prison, and they meet with Reyes, who asks for their help to find Castle, but reaches out to them as her daughter's life is being threatened. So she confesses that she played a part in the death of Frank's family in an attempt to apprehend the blacksmith, because it was a whole sting operation and she didn't clear the park of civilians, which she should have done, because she didn't want them to, tip her hand to the gangs that it was actually a sting operation. So yeah, right after this confession though, she's promptly killed by a machine gun fire, which everyone assumes was from the Punisher getting his revenge. Foggy gets shot in the shoulder, and the rest of them luckily make it out okay. So then we get quite an interesting scene where Matt goes to the prison to visit Wilson Fisk to gather information on where Frank Castle might have went. When Fisk wasn't very forthcoming, Matt threatens him with preventing his girlfriend from ever being able to enter the country again, to which Fisk responds by beating the ever-loving shit out of him as the guards do nothing. And he confesses his plan to completely take over the prison and regain his power outside once he gets out, and to kill Matt and everyone he loves. Now, this was a very scary, intense scene, and it also severely questions Matt's method of not killing, as by putting Fisk in jail apparently didn't stop him, as he threatens to become even more powerful. However, on the other hand, I kind of don't like this trajectory that putting Matt on, because towards the end of the season he's always failing, and I renew my feelings that Fisk buying the prison so completely where all the guards do his bidding is a bit too unrealistic for my taste. But since we don't see Fisk again this season, this is obviously a setup for future seasons. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kingpin as a villain in some of these other Marvel shows, possibly in the Defenders. So we see Elektra again at some isolated airfield where this dude is hitting on her, but it turns out he was sent to kill her, but he doesn't succeed and she kills him instead, and she finds out that he wasn't sent by the Hand, but he was sent by Stick, who apparently wants her dead now. Meanwhile, Karen continues to investigate Castle and finds that the doctor who was involved in his case has been murdered, but she starts to question if it was Frank who did it. Then Frank shows up at Karen's apartment, to tell her that he didn't kill those people, and while he's there, someone tries to kill her, but he saves her life, proving that in fact it wasn't him, and Frank then whisks her away. And the episode ends with the Hand coming to the hospital where the survivors are being kept, but Daredevil is there waiting for them. Meanwhile, the victims in the hospital all of a sudden look all spooky, and the son of the accountant kills his own father, and they all seem to want to go with the Hand, and it's just very creepy. So my rating for The Man in the Box out of 10 is a 7, very good. A suspense-driven episode that ramped up the tension by showing Fisk as once again being a force to be reckoned with, where Reyes and other are killed seemingly by the Punisher, but it turns out not to be him, and the hospital tension was suspenseful as well. So a decent episode, but nothing really great. So next is episode 11.380, which begins with the Hand storming the hospital in which Claire's nurse friend is killed. But Daredevil shows up just in time to save her. But after an intense struggle, they throw Claire out of a window and Daredevil has to jump after her in order to save her. However, this allows the Hand to get away with the patients. Now, this was a very exciting fight scene. It was super intense, but I kind of had issues with those creepy patients. First of all, it was never explained what the hell the deal with them is, and why they wanted to actually return to the Hand, and why they were so important to the Hand, and the creepily way that they were acting seems to imply they had some sort of supernatural abilities. I'm sorry, this whole storyline was a bit far too hokey for me. I didn't really care for it. Also, I didn't really like how Matt was trying to deal with the Frank Castle situation and the Hand situation at the same time, and he alienates pretty much all of his friends to do so. He then checks up on Karen, who tells him that Castle didn't kill these people, and it was most likely the blacksmith trying to kill everyone who knows something about him. So Matt tries to help Karen, but she's had enough of him and tells him to bugger off. She then promptly ditches her police escort and goes out with Frank. Meanwhile, Claire tries to deal with the aftermath of the Hand's attack and finds that one of the dead bodies of the attackers appears to have already been autopsied, which I suppose plays into the Hand's ability to rise from the dead. However, the hospital administrator doesn't care and tries to bury that anything ever happened and officially states that the nurse died in an accident. Claire is pissed off about this and they threaten to punish her, so instead she outright quits. So Daredevil then goes on a mission to find the blacksmith. He knocks some heads together until he finds out who the blacksmith's main competition is, and it's Madame Chow from Season 1. So he confronts her to get information about the blacksmith, and all she tells him is that he gets his supplies by boat. Meanwhile, Karen and Frank have coffee at a diner and have a lovely conversation until she finds out that he's using her as bait. But when the men come to kill her, he tells her to hide, and he beats the ever-loving fuck out of these men to find out where the blacksmith is, and then he kills them right after he tells them. And Karen no longer knows, whether or not to trust him. So then the Punisher goes on to the boat to kill the men, and Daredevil, while scanning the city for clues, hears this and is attracted to it. The Punisher corners a man who claims to be the blacksmith, but Daredevil shows up and prevents Frank from killing him and telling him that he's lying. The Punisher and Frank then have it out again, and the Punisher says his way is bullshit and the blacksmith needs to die. And after seeing what happened to Fisk prospering in prison, you can really see his point. And apparently Daredevil can as well, as he tells the Punisher he'll make an exception just this once. But Frank doesn't buy it, saying that there's no coming back from doing this. And that's the interesting conflict the show has set up from day one. How far is going too far, where you cease to be a hero and start to become a villain yourself? However, the guy that got away called for reinforcements, and Daredevil realizes the boat is just filled with explosive, and all they have to do is shoot it in order for it to blow up, and says that they need to get out of there. So the Punisher just shoves Daredevil off the bun, then confronts the goons and that show up, and they simply shoot the boat and blow it up. So then we cut over to Stick, who sends 2 men to kill Elektra, but they don't even get 2 feet before Elektra shows up and kills them both. But one of them barely makes it away and drives over to Matt to tell him Elektra's going to kill Stick. And then we end the episode with a cliffhanger of Elektra coming for Stick, where Daredevil is on his way to stop her. So my rating for .380 out of 10 is a 7, very good. So this episode was pretty much centered on the Punisher and his hunt for the blacksmith, but other plots of Elektra versus Stick and the Hand trying to get their creepy guys, it just intrudes on this main plot from time to time. While I like the storyline with Frank and the blacksmith, I think this episode felt too disjointed with the creepy monster dudes, which I didn't really like at all. And the story with Elektra versus Stick, in fact, it felt far too jarring how they so quickly went from Daredevil hunting the blacksmith and almost being killed on an explosion on the boat to all of a sudden trying to stop Elektra from killing Stick. This is a problem I think the second half of the season has overall. It doesn't seem to know what to focus on, and these storylines don't actually work in concert. They actually seem to contrast each other, and they just don't fit together very well. So next we come to episode 12, The Dark at the End of the Tunnel. So this episode starts with the flashbacks to Elektra as a young tween when Stick was training her to be a fighter, and how she doesn't get along with the other trainees as she almost kills one of them. The boy later confronts her and tries to kill her, so she kills him instead. And apparently this puts her in the real outs with Stick's friend who wants to kill her now, so Stick just kills him and then hides her with some rich people and tells her to blend in. So, and thus we're supposed to buy this double life that she lived. I mean, it does make sense on the surface level, but it still feels disjointed to me. I'm not completely buying it. It just seems fake. But whatever. So back in present time, we get this epic fight with Elektra and Stick, and she asks why he's trying to have her killed, but he refuses to answer. And then Daredevil shows up to stop her when the Hand interrupts them all, and so they all stop fighting each other and start fighting the Hand. However, the Hand manages to grab Stick and they abduct him. Daredevil tries to figure out why Stick tried to kill her and why the Hand didn't simply kill Stick and took him hostage instead. And he tries to convince Elektra to help him rescue Stick, but she tells him she's going to kill Stick, and if he gets in the way, she'll kill him too. Meanwhile, Foggy tells Matt about his new interview with a high-up law firm, as apparently people were impressed with his performance at the castle trial, and he and Matt say their goodbyes as it marks the end of Nelson and Murdoch. Foggy tells Matt about an abandoned railway system that the Hand are likely using to get around, which is very helpful, and Daredevil then goes in there looking for them. Meanwhile, Karen mourns the loss of Frank, who she believed died in the explosion at the docks. She seems obsessed with clearing Frank's good name and having people realize that he's not a psycho murderer, so she goes to Frank's former CEO who testified on his behalf at the trial in order to find something positive to say about Frank. But while she's there, she notices a picture on his wall of a man she saw dead in a body bag at the docks and realizes that this colonel is the blacksmith. But he can tell that she figured this out, so he pulls a gun on her. So I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that Clancy Brown is the villain, because he always plays a villain. So he takes her by gun and to the gunpoint and to the car and tells her to drive. But out of nowhere, Frank smashes into him with a pickup truck. I think he already figured out that it was him when he recognized the men sent to kill him at the docks. And of course Frank is still alive. I never thought for a second that he was dead. So the blacksmith tries to crawl away, but Frank chases after him. Karen catches up to him and tries to convince him not to kill him, but he doesn't listen. She warns him that if she goes through with it, then they're done, and she and that he's dead to her. But he takes him into the cabin that they were going to and kills him anyway. There he finds a huge stash of guns with some armor with the, that is kind of shaped like a skull. And thus the Punisher gets his comic book costume. So I don't know how I feel about having the Colonel be the blacksmith. Seems a bit Scooby-Doo-ish to me. And what a wild coincidence that the incident in which Frank's family was killed just so happens to be caused by his former CO that he knows very well. I'm sorry, but that is a bit too comic booky for my tastes. Meanwhile, Daredevil manages to track where the Hand are holding Stick, but he's cornered by a whole bunch of these ninjas from the Hand who are using silent weapons, so that he has a hard time knowing where they are until he hears Stick tell him to track their breath. So he listens to the breath and manages to kick their asses. And then Daredevil catches up to Stick and sets him free, and then Elektra shows up to kill Stick, but Daredevil insists that he won't let her. But then they're once again surrounded by the Hand, led by Nobu, and he reveals that Elektra is dun 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 the Black Sky. I'm sorry, but that's silly. I mean, it isn't directly inconsistent with what they've already established in the show, but it's still silly. What exactly does it even mean by her being the Black Sky? I'm not sure, other than they think that she's a weapon that will help them rule the world, or whatever the hell their goal is. So, anyway, they're all, they all bow to her, and she starts to question herself. But Daredevil rather easily convinces her to fight against them, that her destiny is her own. So together, they and Stick kick the Hand's ass and manage to get away, where Nobu is left to say, "Daredevil must die!" Now, you can't get any more comic booky than that. So my rating for the dark at the end of the tunnel out of 10 is a 6 good. Still interesting with some great fight scenes. I like the moral dilemma they set up with Frank, but it's far too disjointed at this point to have these storylines going at once, and too much of this episode just felt way too hokey for me. So, finally, we get to the finale, episode 13, A Cold Day in Hell's Kitchen. So this begins with Stick tied up and still wanting to kill Elektra because she's the Black Sky, but Matt thinks that's total BS. He then goes up to tell Elektra, who's hanging out on the roof, and Matt talks her down and convinces her to team up with him to strike at the Hand, and that they're much stronger together. Now, there were, of course, romantic undertones to this, which I totally bought. And overall, I think they handled this Elektra-Daredevil relationship really well. And I bought it hell of a lot more than I bought the Matt-Karen relationship. Then we get our Jessica Jones crossover when we find out the firm Foggy is going to work for is he meets with Horgath, Carrie Ann Moss from Jessica Jones. So it looks like Foggy's going to work for her, so maybe he'll pop up in the next season of Jessica Jones. We'll see. So, just when Elektra was telling Stick she's completely devoted to Matt now, Matt gets a call from his police buddy who tells him people whom Matt deduces are the Hand beat the crap out of him in order to get all the information that the police had on Daredevil, most specifically, all of the people that he saved. They then kidnap all of these people, which include Karen, in order to set a trap for Daredevil. Now, shouldn't Claire also be amongst these people? Didn't Daredevil save her as well? Or maybe the police don't know about that. At any rate, I think this is really silly. It's funny this came at the moment where I was commending the show for its strong portrayal of women with the character of Elektra, and then Karen gets used as a damsel in distress that needs to be rescued for like the millionth time. Not a really good look. So Daredevil tries to listen out for any clue on where the hand might be, but can't do it and gets frustrated. Elektra calms him down and gets him to focus so he can find them. Eventually he does, but Elektra thinks he's stupid for going in there because it's obviously a trap, but he goes anyway. He manages to save everyone rather easily, but ends up in a fight with a crap ton of ninjas. And then it turns out Elektra does show up after all and tries to help Matt fight his way out. So then we get this really touching moment that I totally bought, where Matt confesses his love for her. Well, in a way. He tells her that she helped him see who he really is and that she's the only one he can really be himself around. And she agrees that once they get out of this, that they'll run away together and leave everything behind. So I did totally buy this, except for the fact that there were tons of ninjas rushing towards them trying to kill them. Seems like a bad time to stop for a heart-to-heart. And of course, the scene is also where I knew Elektra was going to die, because I knew there was no way they were actually going to run away together. So they run out on the rooftop and are confronted by a crap ton of ninjas led by Nobu, who, with more on the way. They then, kick their asses as they always do until Nobu gets the better of Daredevil and looks like he's going to kill him, until Elektra rushes in and she gets killed instead, and then she dies in Matt's arms. Nobu then tries to run away, leaving a group of ninjas to finish off Daredevil. Then suddenly the Punisher, Frank Castle, from another rooftop, just appears and starts shooting the ninjas, and he takes them out and he gives them a big, "Oh, look, it's Daredevil, oh, it's the Punisher, way!" Leaving Daredevil to deal with Nobu, who does a couple of cool moves that knocks him off the building. Now, this was a rather cheesy Punisher ex machina, that it just so happens that he shows up at the last minute to save the day. Well, too bad that he couldn't have gotten there like a couple minutes earlier, then maybe Elektra might still be alive. And then we see Nobu, after having fallen from a tall building, open his eyes, and this was a real, oh, come on moment for me, as I thought it was just so cheesy. But thankfully they made it okay by having Stick just pop up and kill him. That, and I was like, okay, that's not so bad then. Then we see Matt and Stick mourning Elektra over her grave, and again I did buy his grief here, and I thought they played it off really well. Then, after a somewhat cheesy montage with Karen reading her article, which is kind of a fluff piece, Matt shows up at Karen's place with the Daredevil mask and admits that he's Daredevil. Now, this wasn't all that impactful, seeing how she was just about the only main character left on the show who didn't know this. Seems like everyone and their mother knows this by now. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. And then the season ends with a few clips that show the hand had dug up Elektra's body from the grave, and they now have it on that weird stone thingy. So since we know they have the ability to bring people back to life from the dead, it's safe to say that we will be seeing Elektra again. So my rating for A Cold Day in Hell's Kitchen is an 8, extremely good. This was a really intense episode with the romance and tragic loss of Elektra that I think was pulled off really well. And there was almost like a Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid feel to the scene where Elektra and Matt were talking about running away together, as they were in a situation pretty much impossible to get out of. But Matt does get out of it thanks to Punisher Ex Machina, which quite frankly felt really fake and shoehorned in, as several other moments in this episode that reeked a bit too much of cliche that prevented it from being considered great in my eyes. So that's it for my review of Daredevil episodes 10 through 13. Be sure to check back here next week as I do my overall review of Daredevil Season 2. And be sure to check out my channel for many other videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Better Call Saul, Fear the Walking Dead, Vikings, and more. And be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.